Good morning. Got some lively people here this morning. Good to see extra faces. I made some copies of some maps I drew up, and I didn't make enough copies, so might have to share with somebody sitting next to you. We'll go to Daniel chapter 7. I've been trying to work up the idea of where the Antichrist will come from, and this is something that if you've been in this church as long as I have, you heard Jonathan's father do long-term studies on Daniel and Revelation. But as we've read through parts of chapter 7 and 8 in Daniel, we've noted that the Antichrist will come out of one of the 10 areas of a recombined Roman kingdom in the future, Roman Empire, so to speak. But then it narrows it down in let's read chapter 7, verses 1, 2, and 3. Let's just begin there. We're going to be in Daniel almost the whole time. Daniel 7, first 3 verses. And I wanted to draw up a map to kind of illustrate the territory we're talking about. And I learned something. I'm not the artist I thought I was. Trying to draw a map that made sense and looked right. I gave up. You'll have to live with what I developed. In these 3 verses, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another. You know, in chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar's dream is interpreted, and he sees this glorious image. I mean, it's huge. And the head is gold, the breast and arms are silver, the belly is brass, and the legs and the feet are iron. A few years after, well, it's a number of years after that, it says this came in the first year of Belshazzar, who was Nebuchadnezzar's grandson. Nebuchadnezzar saw a glorious image, but here Daniel sees beasts. And these aren't pets. These are, a lion and a bear and, a leopard. They were not domesticated animals. They were threats to mankind. And it reminded me, the thought just occurred that these beasts are a threat to mankind. And what area of mankind is being talked about as far as being persecuted, being violated? Israel. It's true today. Elizabeth talking about all the comments against Israel at a library convention. So the kingdoms that oppressed Israel, starting with Egypt, they were considered world powers, so to speak, but they had limited territory. They were local to Israel. And whether you're talking about the Babylonian captivity or the Medo-Persian or the Greek or the Roman, it all in Scripture is related to the oppression and the opposition against Israel. And they didn't really rule over the whole world, but they were world powers. They were strong rulers. We're still in Daniel 7. Jump down to verses 19 and 20. And what catches my eye as we read this is about the concentration that Daniel has on a little, called the little horn. Here we see, then I would know the truth of the 4th beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, And of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And so the interpretation is that the future, who we know as the Antichrist, will come out of a revived Roman Empire. It'll be reconstituted. And let's go to chapter 8, just to read a couple verses here. And what we learn in chapter 8 is, this is about 2 years later than the vision that Daniel just had, and he sees more detail. He sees a focus in Daniel chapter 8. Let's look at verses 20 to 24. He sees 2 beasts. He sees a goat, or a ram, yes, a ram with 2 horns. Then he sees a he-goat, the billy goat. But in 8, beginning with verse 20, the ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. Now this is future to Daniel. Now he's about to be in the Medo-Persian Empire, because it was only the 2nd or 3rd year of Belshazzar when Babylon fell. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. The first king, of course, Alexander the Great. This beast was shown to him with a notable horn, a single horn, like a unicorn. Now that being broken, that great horn was destroyed, whereas 4 stood up for it. 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, so we're looking towards the future, we're looking towards the last days, even beyond the day we live in. We're looking towards the time of the tribulation. In the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. It says his power will be otherworldly. It won't be his wisdom or his might or his expertise. He will be empowered by Satan, really. So this tells us that out of the Grecian territory, this future kingdom will arise. I passed out some of these copies. So if we need to make more, we can. And what I was interested in is, how big was Rome? What territory did Rome consist of? And you can see it's the northern rim of Africa. It's the Middle East area. And around, this would be Turkey here. This would be Greece and Italy. Rome had power all the way over to the oceans, the Atlantic Ocean coast, and they actually even conquered part of the British Isles. They didn't have control of all of it, but maybe 2/3 of Great Britain territory was Rome. So this is how big Rome was at their peak, the best I can. You look at maps, and there's different times when they had more or less territory, especially with Greece. Now, when you compare that to Greece, the next map I have is Grecian territory, and it's more focused. They conquered Egypt, the Middle East, over to Macedonia in the Greek area, and quite a bit over to the east, Saudi Arabia, partly where Iraq and Iran are, all the way over to the territory that actually was into the Indian subcontinent, in Indian. So Greece was more concentrated to their east. East is that way. So out of this territory, the last map I drew, when Alexander died, he had dozens, maybe scores of generals fighting under him. They fought among themselves to rule the territory of Greece. And it took about 4 decades to settle out to 4 different territories. This was Macedonia. This was called Pergamum. This was Syria, or the Seleucid Empire. And then, of course, the Egyptian. There was called Ptolemy, I think was the name of the general who took over that territory. So these are the 4 areas, divisions, that historically Greece was divided into. And the reason that's important is, with this in mind, go to chapter 11 in Daniel. I want to read the first 6 verses first. Chapter 11 is, 45 verses or so? And it's all about, the majority of it is about the future battles among these kings or these territories. So, let's see the opening of the chapter in verses 1 through 6 of chapter 11. Also, I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. This is a new chapter, but it's a continuation of chapter 10. And Gabriel? Yeah, Gabriel is speaking to Daniel, and he's going into the future here. Verse 2, And now I will show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all, and by his strength throughout his riches he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. So there was a jealousy and an envying going on. Verse 3, And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion, that's Alexander, and do according to his will. Verse 4 says, And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided towards the 4 winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, not to his children, nor according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up even for others besides those. And the king of the king of the south shall be strong. That would be the ruler in Egypt, the kingdom, the Ptolemy. The king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes. He shall be strong above him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. And in the end of years they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand nor his arm, but she shall be given up, they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her, these things. I probably didn't need to read that verse. That verse really doesn't tell us anything. But it begins a history of conflict between the king of the north and the king of the south. And I have a book of world history. It's not a Christian author. It's not a Christian book. It's strictly history. And the reference is the king of the south, which is Egypt, and the king of the north, which is Syria. These 2 kingdoms fought back and forth. Their maps would change from time to time as territory was surrendered or reconquered. But this whole chapter 11 refers to what happened in the north and south. And you can look in a history book and you can track many of the things that Daniel foretells at this time. The conflict, let's go down to verse 40. I want to read verses 40 to 45. And this takes us beyond past history for us into the future. Because where I'm thinking here is we're talking about the Antichrist. It says he will come out of the 4 horns that replaced the notable horn of Alexander. The 4 kingdoms that they were divided into. In the future, there will be a ruler who will arise in one of these territories who will conquer the other 3. Now, that's hand in glove with scripture it's in the end of chapter 9 of Daniel, where it says the prince that will come will make a covenant with Israel for 7 years. Israel's surrounded. There's a little bit of a wide spot right here. That's Israel. Do you ever see the maps that people put on Facebook? It says, here's Israel, and here's all the Muslim countries around. There's like 99% of the territory around them is Muslim. When one little area is Israel, and they want them wiped off. They want them killed, swept to the sea. It's right in the middle of a highway of traffic of all kinds. But what was I saying? The Antichrist will rise out of one of these territories, and he's referred to as the king of the north. This area here includes Iran and Iraq. So we don't know maybe necessarily where he will come from, except it will be this territory. He will arise in the future. He will take over power in that country, make an agreement with Israel not to touch them. And then he will attack the others, the ones surrounding Israel. Wars and rumors of wars. But it will be, for the first half of the tribulation period, Israel's not attacked. Not until the middle of the week when he turns his eyes upon Israel after that. We'll see that in this chapter here. Verse 40, I think that's where we're going to go. Daniel 11, verse 40. We're going to read down to 45. I think it's the last verse in that chapter. And at the time of the end, so we're talking about the king of the north in what we would call Syria. At the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, with horsemen, and many ships, and he shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter also into the glorious land, that's talking about Israel, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. Now that's significant. We think about the Antichrist of being a world ruler, universally, right? I mean, America and everywhere. But there's a possibility that we might consider that his time is limited, his authority and his territory of, at least over his direct control, is limited. And I want you that's why I think it's important that this is thrown in. The 3 little areas within the area of Israel across the Jordan River or to that direction, they will escape out of his hand. Verse 42, he shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape, but he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and Ethiopians shall be at his steps. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. Very simplified understanding of what the future holds. He will enter the glorious land. He will set up what he wants his kingdom to be in Israel. I brought the globe because all the territory we're talking about, okay, we're going to focus here. Got the camera. All the territory we're going to focus is right in this area right here. Now, let me stand right here. If you look at the map I drew for Rome, you can see Europe and you can see Asia. If Antichrist takes over the kingdom ruled by the 10 kings, or in their presence in that future day, we can understand him being in control of Egypt, or Europe, and over into, I can't read upside down, the Middle East. Here's Italy, here's Greece, here's Turkey, here's Israel right here, here's Egypt. We can understand that the Antichrist will, by taking over the 10 kings within this area, scripturally, literally, that's where he will have direct power. But we have no way of knowing what kind of influence he will have on the rest of the world. We know we live in such an interconnected condition. Taiwan and China sells us chips for our vehicles. How long do we have vehicles sitting in lots because they couldn't get chips for the cars? We're interconnected. Whatever a future ruler does that has as much power as Antichrist is presented as having in authority. But when you look at that area and compare it to the rest of the globe, it seems limited. I was reading somewhere that in Revelation where it says the judgments came and the creatures in the sea and the creatures in the ocean, they died, and a fourth of humanity dies. And I didn't think about it this way before, but one person at least, and I'm not well read, I'm not going to say that, but the idea was introduced that it may be just talking about the area where the Antichrist has direct control. It may not be a fourth of the total population of the earth at that time. That I don't know about. I haven't thought about it enough. I don't think Scripture has, it's not spelled out clearly enough for me anyway. Anybody have any thoughts about that, Jonathan? Ever think about that? Okay. Well, anyway, we know that the Antichrist will rule, and I know Jonathan's father, when he taught, he will rule with an army, he will have financial, economic power, and what's the third? Religion, religious power. He will use all those influences, and his power may be directly isolated, but his influence will not be isolated or limited to universally. There's a verse in Jeremiah says it is a time of Jacob's trouble, and that is the prophecy in Daniel 9. God says, I need 70 weeks of years to finish my dealings with Israel. 69 of those weeks of years have passed. They ended with the crucifixion. And there's one more week, the 7-year period. And it's a time when God will deal with Israel. God is bringing Israel back to him. So it just gave me something to think about, what that means. The only hint we have, and I think it's in, I didn't look it up, I think it's in Ezekiel, where the king of the north is going to conquer territories, and different little countries are quoted as saying, what are you up to? Are you going to get a spoil? What are you doing this for? And that's sort of a description of a weakened opposition. America, we see right now how we could be very weakened militarily. We sell off your petroleum reserves, which is necessary for defense. You give and contribute not only billions of dollars, but weapons and materiel to Ukraine, to where we need to rearm ourselves. We're in a very weakened condition right now. If we had a direct attack, well, we probably are having direct attacks. We don't know what kind of cyber stuff is going on. You know, when airplanes can't get, the radar doesn't work, or this telephone system goes down, you wonder, is that being manipulated? We could be put in a very submissive mode as a nation for years, and probably it's a political thing to be involved in war everywhere, because that keeps your economy running and people are making money, and but that can only last so long. It just, thinking about the future, thinking about the Antichrist, thinking about the period of the tribulation. But I thought it was interesting to just see what a limited area even the Roman Empire held. It wasn't what we would consider worldwide, but they were the world ruler. All of these kingdoms, they went against Israel, and that's what the story of the Scripture is about. It's about God dealing, at least in this part of the story, dealing with Israel. That's what I have for today. Anybody want to comment? Something we need to maybe try to look at a little bit more detailed?